if you can't explain what you're looking for in 30 seconds to somebody, how can they help you? And so through Greenhouse, I really honed that 30-second focused statement of what I was
Mm-hmm.
looking for. And she said, well, you need to talk to my friend Charlie. I'm not exactly sure what he does, but I think it's that.
Today is a fun episode because we have Stefanie Naden on the podcast, who was a Greenhouse member and coachee in the past, several years ago, when she was really feeling stuck at kind of a crossroads in her career. And she gets into the story of where she was at and why. But she offered to share her story because she's had a lot of really big wins since working with Greenhouse. And although that's nice to share, and I appreciate the kudos, it was actually more fun to hear where she really got stuck in being a generalist and not being able to stand out as a generalist for generalist roles and among other generalists who have had lots of very different experience, and really finding this sweet spot, or finding this breakthrough moment where she learned how to distill and articulate in 30 seconds what is it that she is looking to do, and how that kind of opened the floodgates for her. So she's at a company now called Bodhi, and she is the head of customer success. And I think that this is a really great story that will resonate with different people.
So before my current role, I was working in a sort of part-time contracting consulting type of role. And it had come about before the pandemic. And so the idea that I could work remote was actually novel at that point and felt worth being on my own and doing this 1099 path, which I had never done. I had always taken like safe salaried type of jobs where everything was covered, but I kind of kept hitting dead ends where I didn't feel fulfilled, or I didn't feel like I had a lot of autonomy. So after taking kind of like a soul searching hiatus, where I actually worked on an organic farm for a summer, I was then like, how can I take all of these disparate skills that I have in project management. I worked in roadway construction as an engineer originally. I worked in digital marketing. Take all these things and put them together. And so I was working for a physical therapist. And then when the pandemic hit, I was quickly tested in taking those skills and helping them get fully transitioned to online and using an electronic medical record system and being fully HIPAA compliant. But physical therapy online, while it can be effective, obviously the business wasn't going to grow in that environment. And so I followed the owner to another venture, which was online coaching, and it was athletic coaching specifically for mountain athletes. And so I found myself again in that situation where I know enough about lots of different things and how to make systems talk to each other and how to implement online platforms and build like an onboarding process. And so I became like the customer experience manager for this online athletic coaching community.
Yeah.
And I built the training sheets. I created the whole flow of like how to onboard new athletes, and plug that into the Stripe system, et cetera. So I was doing that. And then I kind of had another soul searching moment where I realized, hey, these skills are worth a lot of money. And now remote is the standard. And so I don't need to be underpaid in this contracting role. I should really, or I wanted to pursue like full-time employment again. As nice as it sounds, like piecing together and hustling various things, I actually kind of came to terms with the fact that structure is really helpful to me. I take better use of my free time when there's some guardrails.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and yeah, coming to terms with all of that, and but more specifically, the fact that remote was now across the board. Um, Living in Salt Lake City, we weren't the hub for tech companies that we are now.
Mm-hmm.
It was growing, but it definitely existed a 30-minute commute from my house. You would think it would be in downtown Salt Lake City, but it's actually further south.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of opened up and realized, wow, I have some great skills and it's time to pursue them with a company that's going to pay me what I'm worth. And yeah, it leads straight into like why I felt stuck.
Yeah. No, I'm curious during that period or even now what you called yourself because we've used the term generalist or kind of multi interest, multi passionate. A lot of times it's more like I'm a Swiss Army knife or some kind of term that
Mm-hmm.
it's a growing population of people, but there's no word for it yet. Like, did you ever have something that resonated?
Yeah, I listened to this talk by Elizabeth Gilbert,
Mm-hmm.
and she was talking about follow your passion. Everybody should follow your passion. I waited tables until I had my breakthrough following my passion. And she said someone came up to her after her talk and was like, I'm so depressed because if I had a passion, it would have showed up by now. Like, here I am in my 30s, my 40s. There isn't some secret thing. And I think I had been pursuing that. Like, what's my passion? If I just step away from work, it's magically going to show up. And it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I took that hiatus working on the farm, I was listening to a lot of podcasts because I was working by myself,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
weeding, planting, watering. And that's when I listened to this talk. And she said she realized she'd been doing a huge disservice to all these people who are really influential in her life. And she was like my best friend, my business manager, all these people that I rely on to support me in following my passion. She termed them hummingbirds. She's like, they've bounced from industry to industry and they're like cross pollinating among these different industries. And I think that resonates with me as like a gardener and a slightly more crunchy person than a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
um, and so I like that, like somebody who is bringing ideas and seeing that there are these underlying similarities between industries. I went from being a construction project manager to a digital marketing paid search specialist. And people are like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm good at spreadsheets. I knew how to manage money and how to do change management with clients who have high expectations. Like when you boil it down to those fundamentals, they're identical. And the thing that's like simultaneously anxiety producing about work is how fast it's moving, but
Mm-hmm.
that's also a benefit to people who want to make changes. Is at the time I worked in digital marketing, no one was an expert in how Google worked, and even when you become an expert, they purposely change it every 6 months.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I
if you don't
remember
know how to keep hacking the system, that's like your
yeah.
skill.
I remember going to a user experience conference in San Francisco years back, and it was a newer budding industry, and so obviously it attracts lots of generalists or even unicorn type creatives where you can do a little of everything because that's kind of the nature of UX. You have to kind of know the whole life cycle, and so there's all these like generalist type of people there, and yeah, there was something really interesting about talking to people in the San Francisco area who I would say, "Oh yeah, I've been at the company I'm at for like 6 years," and their reaction was like, "Oh, what's wrong? Like, what's the problem?" Because to them, normal and good was hopping around to different companies every 6 months. And I think at the time they're
Wow.
in that area, the average tenure at a company was 9 months. And then, it's funny because like trends go from West Coast to the East Coast, or at least used to. And so you come over to the East Coast where I'm at, and it's if somebody had jumped around every 6 months, you'd be like, what's wrong? I mean, that
Yeah.
was viewed as a problem. Whereas the fact that I had been at one company for a while was like, oh, it's a good company. You must like it there.
Yeah.
And then fast, even a step further, it's like, well, two people in my parents' generation, 6 years seems short. It's like, oh, that
Yeah.
what's the problem if you're moving every 6 years? So I am curious. You said that kind of brings you to where you felt stuck, and that was, I think, where your path intersected with Greenhouse. But what was
Mhm.
going on? What was going on for you at the time?
Yeah, I think I had made a couple of these big leaps before, but they hadn't come with salary growth. And so where I felt stuck was my next move, I want to be really intentional. Even though I was definitely eager to move on, I don't like to move every 6 months. I feel like it takes 6 months to get up to speed anywhere I've worked. And then you're really effective for like the next year. And then after 18 months, you hit that stage of, am I growing here? Is there a path for growth? Or is it now time to, if growth is not an opportunity here, yeah, do I want to stagnate? And everywhere I've worked before that, I've essentially been promoted every single year, but it was always within my individual contributor role. So, okay, I'm a paid search specialist. Now or junior, now I'm the normal, now I'm senior. And where I had hit dead ends was I didn't want to be the manager of something I didn't like doing. And so once I had decided I was ready to move back into full time salaried work, I ran into a friend and he said, I think you'd be really great in customer success. And I think I had been detached from the tech world, like the corporate tech world, enough to not even realize that was a function. And like, customer success, what's that? And realizing that that really is the generalist within tech is customer success. It's a little bit of sales, it's a little bit of technical know-how, it's a little bit of product, it's a little bit of marketing, it's really a little bit of everything, and sits at the center of that spoke, um, like the hub for the spokes, and is still customer facing, which was something that not everybody enjoys doing. And I really like interfacing with customers. So I was looking for that. So now I had a title that was great. But where I felt stuck was, who do I know outside of this one friend? And I interviewed at his company, but I was overqualified for the entry level role, not quite qualified enough for managing enterprise accounts. So even though they had me apply for different roles, I was kind of stuck in the middle there. And I more specifically really wanted to work on anything related to fighting climate change. And I felt like the more narrow I got, I was just searching for this needle in a haystack. And I still think that's actually an effective strategy to narrow your options because application fatigue is real.
Yeah.
It's just sending your application to things where you have absolutely no connection, unless you've got some insanely specific resume that someone is going to pluck out and be like, we've got to talk to that person. I think it can be really hard to stand out as a generalist applying for generalist roles without something to help you float to the surface. So that's when I reached out to Greenhouse and say, I can't do this by myself. And I'm running into dead ends with my own personal skills. And I got a whole new education on like more recent resumes and really taking that step back and creating the personal brand statement. And I went and reread it recently, and it was cool that it was still accurate. So I felt like I
Oh,
had
wow.
really honed in on who I am and what I bring to work, which was really cool. And the thing that got me really unstuck through greenhouse coaching was once you've laid the groundwork, like, okay, you've done your personal brand statement, you've gotten more clear on what you want. Um, if you can't explain what you're looking for in 30 seconds to somebody, how can they help you?
Yeah.
And I kept telling people what I was looking for, and I was just really fumbling around how to say it. And so through Greenhouse, I really like honed that 30-second, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm looking to do. And I was at a close friend's barbecue. Saw a friend I hadn't seen in a while, and she asked, "Hey, what are you up to?" Like, well, I'm looking for a new job, and I had my focused statement of what I was
Hmm.
looking for, and she said, "Well, you need to talk to my friend Charlie. I'm not exactly sure what he does, but I think it's that."
Yes. And that's the magic
Yep.
of that being able to articulate it, because somebody that you talk to along the way is going to have a connection to a person or a place. And what I love seeing is when it's kind of 6 degrees of separation. Like, well, you talk to that person, they don't have a job for you either, but like they know someone else and they know someone else and they know a place and then they know someone, and that's the thing that unlocks it. But I find it so people have such a hard time trusting that process that they want the person in front of them to have the job. Like, if the person in front of them doesn't have a job, then this is failing. This isn't working.
Yeah, I know. And this friend, she's, a therapist for teenagers. So if you had that mindset, you wouldn't ever bring it up to her because she's nowhere even remotely closely related to what I was looking for, looking to do. But it turns out a friend of hers I had never met, even though we run in the same circles,
Yeah.
um, worked in sales at my current company.
Yeah.
And we got in touch. And when I talked to him, he said it was the literal exact role I was looking for, customer success manager, climate based company, like the needle in the haystack. And he said, "Hey, if I were you, I would shoot your shot. Like, I would apply tonight," because people had been applying. And if I hadn't done all that pre work, the saying like, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So I had applied to places where I didn't have connections, and all of that effort had really helped me refine my resume to where it wasn't very hard to make the tweaks, match the job description, and write a compelling cover letter because it was something I was actually excited about. That's sort of a filter for me. If it's extremely painful to write a cover letter,
Yeah.
you might just send it in anyways, but that
Yeah.
might be a sign.
That's so fun to hear. I mean, I knew pieces of the story from when it was happening, but it's fun to hear in retrospect like this.
Yeah.
I think you said something really important in there about being ready to explain what you're looking for in 30 seconds. Like, what was the part for you that was hard about that in the process of writing that 30-second spiel?
I think it's so easy to get bogged down in jargon. And I think this is the problem with a lot of job descriptions is it's like 20 bullet points of jargon, and if
Hmm.
you actually try to distill a job description into 30 seconds,
Yeah.
you're like, well, but there's this other part and there's this other thing and but yeah, distillation is just a challenging process. And we're experiencing that currently as a company too, is editing yourself is really hard. You're like, but you need to know we do this other thing and we have this
Right.
other thing. And like,
I have
what
that
do they
same
say? Like, you
problem.
don't want to this might be morbid, but like you don't want to kill any of your kids or something. It's like
Yeah.
all of these features are so near and dear to your heart, but you need to be able to distill it. So I think editing yourself, you're like, but I'm so much more than that.
Yeah. Well, especially for the
But if you
generalist
can't be
type.
clear, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
somebody who is just, I mean, I always give the example of like a teacher, a firefighter, a doctor, a lawyer. It's like, well, yeah, you are that one thing and that one word people understand what it means. But
Yeah.
the generalist in tech, I mean, yeah, you are 18 different things and they all feel equal. And and there's no title that people understand all the
Hmm.
18 things like with doctor or teacher. And so
Yeah.
it makes it extra hard to do the distilling.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and you said an important thing too, which is the friend, they had to actually like in creating this little 30-second pitch, they want to help you, but they don't know how to help you if you can't clearly say what you're looking for. And I
Yep.
don't know about you and your experience in that, but I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't want to bug them. I don't want to ask too much from my friends. I don't want to. And it's like, no, they want to help you. It's just they don't know how unless you give them a clear kind of direction.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I think after one of the coaching sessions, I just had this moment where I thought, okay, this isn't going fast enough on my own. I'm going to tell everyone I talk to what I'm trying to accomplish
Yeah.
and see what happens.
I think I remember that. Yeah. That's interesting.
Because at the barbecue, I could have been like, oh, well, I've been camping, I've been hiking. I could have talked about like any other number of things that are more relevant to my friendship with that person. And so you also have to decide you're going to be okay with being a little bit selfish and saying, well, really what I need is someone to have a connection to somebody I don't currently know.
Yeah, but in a weird way, it's selfless to be clear about what you're looking for
Hmm.
because on the receiving end, and I experience this all the time now, where people want to pick my brain about this or that or have a meeting to, and it's like, I want to help you, but I don't know what you're asking for. And so it makes it really hard to
Yeah,
help. And
it's
now
too
I'm
open
racking
ended.
my brain. Yeah. Whereas someone who says, hey, I am in a job search, I'm looking for this kind of role. Here's the things that I do, that's actually really helpful because now my mental Rolodex can quickly go to like, oh, I should introduce you to so and so.
Mm,
But yeah, it's almost ironic. It's like, but that took a lot of hard work for you to make it really distilled and concise for that and make it easy for them.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's what resonated the most with me about Greenhouse because I had sifted through a lot of kind of whack career coaching options
Yeah.
and invested in too many, but there were just
Mm.
some where the feeling I got was, yeah, they're going to encourage me to slide into DMs and just send these out of left field, like almost like cold calling without having done any of the research. That just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't land with anybody. I've 100% had really good success rates with people wanting to help me through LinkedIn, but you have to do your end of it, which is like go look at a couple of their posts, respond to something specific that they've recently showed they care about and make that kind of connection. And when you do that, it's not manipulative. You're actually responding to something real that's important to them and either validating it or asking for more information. And then people, once you've like broken that barrier and shown that you've done the absolute minimum required to know who you're talking to, they want to help you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I, it's funny about the whole career coaches thing because I've been thinking a lot lately about the fact that we think networking, we're kind of working on rebranding networking because it's a term, no one likes the idea of it. It conjures up a lot of icky, like bad events and scammy people and talking to strangers and all the kinds of stuff. you're mentioning there. And really, to do it well, you never have to talk to strangers. You never have to go to a networking event. You never have to do any of that. In fact, you can just start with the people you already know and you like because they're the ones who want to help you the most. But it all comes back to the work you did. I mean, the part that makes it selfish is if I just start asking them to help without any direction. They want to help, but if I can give them some clarity, yeah, that'll take work on my side, but they'll be able to like start making connections that lead somewhere. I don't have to go talk to strangers or go to networking events. And I think that can be a really freeing feeling, but I encounter so many people who they feel stuck. They never even get to the steps that you did because they just assume that it's either going to be like icky networking or nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even joining Greenhouse, you could look at that as networking. It was, and I almost hesitate to say that community building is now also getting used so much that it's going to turn into the same feeling as the word networking.
Right.
But it was
Yeah.
joining a community of people who were sharing the same struggles, had the same desires. And that's maybe how I view networking with strangers is finding people who are trying to accomplish something that's similar to you. And I just went to an in person event for customer success leaders,
Oh,
and
fun.
I found out about it on LinkedIn. And yeah, for the introverts, I totally understand why you don't want to drive to an office and go to an event where you don't know a single person. But I'm maybe lucky. It's a double-edged sword that I am very extroverted. And so I went, and you sit down, but you have to like practice open body language if you're going to do it. Because if you don't know anybody, you got to put out this energy that's like, I don't know anyone, but if you talk to me, I will be relieved that you're talking to me. And so
Yeah.
someone introduced themselves to me who was an organizer of the group, and you can kind of trust that people who put those events together are going to do some of that heavy lifting of introducing themselves or making a connection. And then from there, I realized, oh, there's this other woman here. She's given me a demo before. And I went and talked to her about her product. And once that guy broke the seal for me, because he had some ownership in like building that community, then it kind of broke down the
Yeah.
walls of doing that with other people at the event. And yeah, I walked away with some new LinkedIn connections in my industry. And that feels really good to actually be a part of a community. So that's how I'm viewing it. Is like I wasn't networking. I was
Uh-huh.
just like, we're all stuck in our like home offices. We got to get
Yeah.
out of the house and meet each other.
Yeah. And it oddly can help with confidence too. Did you experience that part of it, like kind of boosting the confidence to know how to talk about yourself?
Yeah. And I felt confronted with that 30-second pitch again. Like people ask, what do you do? And
Yeah.
it isn't just relevant when you're looking for a job, it's relevant when you have one, and relevant when you're showing up and trying to represent who you work for, or if you're out there trying to build your personal brand, you have to be able to continue to distill it down and
Yeah.
let it roll off your tongue.
I know that's always the hardest thing for me, and I definitely resonate with the generalist journey and identity, and so you know how I always feel it at like a neighborhood gathering or some kind of dinner party type of thing. And of course, everyone you meet, it's like, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do?" And I've always struggled with that moment because I don't know how to say succinctly what I do. And so then it immediately plummets my confidence. In fact, I'm anticipating the moment. And so my confidence is plummeting because I know that in that moment, I'm going to feel so less than like, well, what do I even do? Do I even do anything? I don't even know. Like, it's so easy if you're a teacher or firefighter to say, I'm a teacher. I'm a firefighter, I'm a doctor. Like,
Yeah.
it's 3 words and people instantly get it. But for generalists, there's no 3 words. And so you start to question your whole life suddenly. Like, am I anything? Like, and you know that you bring value. You know that the people you work with love and appreciate what you do. But in that moment, it's like plummets the confidence. And I found that I have the same problem with explaining greenhouse. And we have a purpose statement now that feels really good and spot on to me, that we help people grow the life they want. And we do that through different types of coaching and experiences. And now I've found at the last few gatherings when I've said that, it's like I actually have this so much more swag. It's like I have so much more confidence because I feel good about describing it succinctly. And so then it feels like, oh, it's a real thing and it's going to pique curiosity for them. And then I can explain more versus that plummeting feeling of like, oh, well, I'm just a big nothing. And I don't
Yeah.
even know how to explain what I do. So it must be stupid.
Yeah. I've had those moments in personal gatherings that weren't work related, or someone says, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I just work in tech." And you devalue yourself for some reason. And I've got this group of friends that are funny where they're like, I don't let my friends talk about themselves that way. And we'll like
Yep.
hold each other accountable to, say it again and boost yourself up. And so I think in that moment, oh, I just work in tech. They're like, you're helping with the solar revolution. And I was like, yeah, why don't I say that? So it
Yeah.
is funny that you don't start with the exciting part of what you do. You just minimize it to this like bland label.
Well, it's a good point because when you say, oh, I just work in tech, well, then now that person's eyes glaze over and they're trying to look for an out because they don't know what to say next.
Yeah.
And versus when you say, oh, yeah, I'm working like in the solar revolution and I'm a customer success manager. Actually, I mean, literally, I'm thinking if we were at some kind of gathering and you said that, it would pique my curiosity. And I'd say, oh, like, what does that look like? I'm really curious. And now we've got a real conversation started that could go somewhere good for both of us. So it's kind of an
Yeah.
ironic flip that by being more confident in how you say it, it actually spurs on a better conversation for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time, I might have said that at this networking event where I was like, oh, well, or even at the beginning, I work on a customer experience platform for residential solar installers. At a certain point, yeah, if people's eyes don't light up, maybe you want to get a little more creative with the pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Well, that's cool to hear that kind of your journey of taking the time and spending the energy to get to distill, to get crisp on how you're saying it. And I like I like how it continues on past just a job search moment in time. It's like, no, that carries into any role and whatever you might be doing in life at the moment.
Hmm. Yeah, my LinkedIn heading says like building trust in the solar industry. And I think that actually might be the one I should lead with because that is at the heart of what we're trying to do. It's if there isn't trust, and you just said it at the start of our talk, like I didn't want to go solar because I don't really trust the process. And trust is a currency. And if that is not being freely traded or cultivated, then an industry is going to have a hard time, and the solar industry is having a hard time because there were definitely a lot of false promises made when interest rates were low.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a lopsided purchase where consumers are just undereducated on what it is. And that's bound to change and grow, but it's maybe not happening as fast as we would all like to see it happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's just fun to see you in a role that definitely is a sweet spot for you. And I love how it did kind of combine. It was that Venn diagram moment of the skills and experiences you've had with the thing you're passionate about solving in the world. And I don't know, to me, it's an encouragement because that journey, if you go back to you saying, hearing like, oh, find your passion. You got to find your passion, and feeling like, well, it's not there, because a lot of people do feel stuck in that. I remember I did, thinking there was going to be some magical moment where it's all gets revealed. And you fast forward till now, it's like, well, no, you are kind of in a quote unquote area of passion. It might not be like one very narrow specific thing, but it's a sweet spot for you. And there was a journey and a process to get to that, versus expecting it to just happen overnight. And I'm sure there's still more to come, and more, from here forward, that you don't even know yet, that might be um, really interesting, and learning new things and fulfilling, and new types of roles and leadership. It's like an evolving thing. It doesn't have to be a stagnant, I'm looking for this one answer and I'm either going to hit or miss.
Yeah, for sure. The other biggest change is for the first time, I'm a people leader. I've never managed anyone directly. And so that's what came about in December. And I think for a long time, I sort of undermined myself. I said, "Oh, well, I don't want to manage people." And now that I've had the opportunity to do it, I love it. I love getting to see somebody who is anxious and worried about doing a good job, encourage them and assure them that there's more to life than work. That's like the type of boss that I always want to have, is someone who recognizes that most type A overachieving women are their own biggest critics. So like I don't need to be piling onto that.
Yeah.
I really need to give her like confidence that her instincts are good, and um, most problems are not major to clean up. My like golden rule and work that I've been using for a long time is, will anyone remember that this happened 6 months from now? I've definitely had situations where people are going to remember this happened 6 months from now. It deserves a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
But then there's other ones where it's like, this is going to come and go and no one's going to remember this happened. So, like, definitely let that go at the end of the day.
That's such great advice. That's cool to hear. I mean, and because of a lot of these experiences, you're going to be a great people leader. I mean, can already tell you are thinking more about investing in them than a lot of people leaders do. Well, that's fun. That's a whole other area we could talk about.
Yeah, I think the other like big realization, at least going and pursuing salaried work again, was just recognizing that, yeah, you don't have to make your passions your work. And for some folks, or at least for me, anytime I've tried to monetize something that brings me joy, it kind of crushes the joy.
Yeah.
I did like yoga teacher training just for fun. And then all of a sudden I was like, this needs to be my entire identity. And I like crushed it for myself. And then,
Uh-huh.
gardening, trying to do that full time, crushed it. Now, like gardening as my work break to walk away from a screen and go pick some weeds or like trim some tomatoes is so nice as compared to it dominating my thoughts like all day, every day. So I'm letting my outlets actually be outlets and letting work be the thing that, takes up a lot of your time during the week, but isn't my entire identity.
Yeah. It's so great. And the transition between trying that and trying different ways of approaching it, and so you learn from that, because yeah, some people, it does not work for the passion to be the job, and for some people it really does, and it's not necessarily one size fits all. I like how you have tried the different things and learned from it.
Yeah, I wish I could replace that lived experience some other way, because I think it did, definitely harm my earning potential at a critical stage in my life. And so that's my current journey, is to forgive that and let it go. But yeah, sometimes you just I have to experience it. I had always like followed all the rules, gotten straight A's, so I think I just needed to fall off the rails for a couple of years and see what it was like.
All right. I think a conversation like this has some obvious next steps that I just want to point out for you. And I'm going to break it into three things. So the first one is, I love how Stefanie talked about this phrase like, oh, I just work in tech. And that word just, and that's often the signal. If you find yourself introducing yourself and saying, oh, I just do this, or I just do that, or I just do a little of everything, that's an indicator that maybe take a step back, do the work to distill and get clear about what you do in a way that actually makes you feel more confident and that helps them connect with what you're doing. And so instead of, oh, I just work in tech, I like her shift to say something more meaningful. Like, oh, I actually work in kind of the solar revolution and my role is specifically around customer success. That begs curiosity and more interesting conversation. So the thing I wanted to say with distilling and getting that kind of 30-second pitch is try on different versions. Be okay trying on different versions of what you do and how you explain it. Because what you write on paper or what you think up in your head might feel kind of awkward or clunky when it comes out of your mouth. And so I find it's helpful to say something in my own words out loud to somebody and see how that feels and kind of use each conversation as a little test run. Like, okay, did that feel natural to me or did that feel awkward and forced? Or sometimes it feels a little too cheesy or scripted to say it the way it might look on paper or on LinkedIn. And then the final point I want to make is just how do you do that distillation? And we have a tool called Personal Brand Statement. We will, I'll link it in the notes here, and it's a resource that you can grab. It walks you through multiple steps of how to articulate what it is that you do, the value you bring, the things that you are looking to do. But one of the pieces that's really helpful is the 3 buckets. If you are a generalist or you do multiple things, or you're open to multiple kinds of work, it's helpful to put it into 3 buckets and literally say it that way. You can say, well, my name's Steve. If we're already talking, you know my name. And I just say, well, it kind of boils into 3 buckets of what I do. I do leadership coaching. I also help people figure out what's next in their career. And I also help people really build the life they want in terms of the vision that they have for their daily life and their work-life balance. And so it's just putting it into 3 buckets allows you to say a variety of things you do in an organized way that actually makes sense to the listener. And so what happens kind of neurologically for the listener is they're able to latch on to one or multiple of the 3. And so maybe they only have an idea or connection for you in one of the 3. Well, by presenting it as 3 buckets, their brain can latch onto that one and then help you out in that one area. Versus if you say it as just a stream of consciousness, well, I do just a little of this and a little of that, and I do this kind of stuff and that kind of stuff, it actually doesn't allow the listener to click on to anything that you said. So just try putting it in 3 buckets, try on different versions in conversations that you have, and take note. Actually keep a running list, like on your phone. This is what I said, and this is the part that felt good or didn't, and then kind of adjust from there.